Hello, friends. This is Dorie Clark, and we are here with one of our weekly editions of Newsweek's interview show, Better. And today's guest is Pat Flynn. Pat may be known to many of you as the host of the Smart Passive Income podcast. He's somebody I was proud to profile in my book, Entrepreneurial You, talking about some of his great entrepreneurial lessons and success stories. And he is the author of 3 books: Let Go, Will It Fly, and most recently, Superfans. We're going to talk about today how to capture the lasting attention and loyalty of your audience. Pat Flynn, so great to have you here.
Dorie, I'm just honored. Thank you so much. It's great to chat with you again.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thanks to everybody who is tuning in live. Please feel free to type into the chat box and let us know who you are and where you are tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to hear your questions for Pat Flynn. So, Pat, one of the initial questions I have, one of the starting points, if we are talking about how to create super fans, how to build a community of people, you hear from so many folks that one of the big challenges is it just feels like people are so overstretched these days. They don't have attention spans. They're already members of 700 Facebook groups and all the different things competing for attention. If that is the vibe that is out there, what is the hope for anybody who is interested in building a community and creating super fans? What's the path forward for people who say, "Oh my gosh, why should I even bother? Everybody is so overstretched."
Yeah, I mean, that's the environment we're in for sure. However, that gives us an opportunity to more easily stand out, right? In order to stand out, we need to know what's there and who's in the crowd. So the benefit of this is we can actually capture people's attention today, but we need to focus more on how we might do that. And there's a few things that I talk about in my book, Superfans, specifically, that capture attention. And then again, it's like, well, how do we then hold that attention? So it's not an overnight thing. It doesn't happen instantly, but we need to sort of have that moment of activation to start, because people might be coming across our stuff all the time, whether it's a TikTok video or Reels or short, or perhaps a YouTube video or a link on Google that people find us for. But it's one thing to have the information that they might need. It's another thing to give them the information and then have them go, whoa, I like this. Like, I'm going to stick around and I'm going to go deeper into this person's stuff, right? It's like when you listen to a song on the radio, you might enjoy it, you might love it. You don't know necessarily who the band is, or, you don't know the name of their album yet. You're not necessarily a fan, but that's where it starts when you hear that song for the first time. So even speaking of songs, what's in a song that could capture attention? It's the lyrics, right? When you match the lyrics of your brand with the lyrics that your audience will respond to, that's a great way to capture attention amongst all the noise out there. You want a person to hear your message and to see your video or to listen to your podcast and go, oh my gosh, this person, finally somebody gets me, right? And that's where the lyrics have to line up, right? I call them the lyrics, but it could be your sales copy, your messaging, your positioning, or whatever it might be. And, it reminds me of my wife's story of how she became a fan of the Backstreet Boys. It wasn't like she immediately bought concert tickets and stuff. It was actually a song that resonated with her at a time in her life when she was 15. And that song was called Quit Playing Games with My Heart. And of course, she had just gotten or broke up with her boyfriend or something at that time. Not me. But we realized that it's that initial moment of activation, right? I think it was Jay Abraham who said, if you can define the problem better than your target customer, they're going to automatically assume you have the solution. So that's number one, match the lyrics, right? It's one thing to know what the problem that your target audience is going through, but it's another thing to literally use the same language that they use, in which case the person goes, oh, okay, finally somebody understands where I'm coming from. A second thing that you might be able to do would be to personalize your work in some way, right? A lot of people know me as the host of Smart Passive Income. However, also a lot of people know me as somebody who's a huge fan of Back to the Future. And that just ends up in my copy. It ends up in my personality, because that's just a part of who I am. I'm a giant fan. I have loads of memorabilia, including a 70 millimeter trailer reel from 1985 that played in a theater before Back to the Future came out. Like, that's how nerdy I am. And that's how we are. When we fall in love with something, when we are a fan of something, we get, I mean, we spend a lot of money for one, but number two, we just have this unique, weird language about us, and that makes us who we are. And when you share that, and I'm not saying you have to share like what you have for breakfast every morning, but what makes you you, that's 100% you, and that's to your advantage. So bring that out, bring some personality into your stuff, and you're more able to likely connect with people. One thing that I do on my podcast is I share at the beginning of every show for 5-10 seconds a random fun fact about myself. And it's interesting because when I meet people at conferences, they often remember the one or two fun facts that they can relate to as well. It's like when you go to a conference, Dorie, and I'm sure this has happened to you before, and anybody here watching, you go to a conference and all the conversations are very surface level, like, hey, what's your name? What do you do? Where are you from? But then immediately you see somebody else who maybe went to the same college as you, or is also a parent, or is also a fan of, I don't know, bass fishing or something. And you immediately latch onto that person. So doing that online allows us to have these opportunities happen quite often. And then third and finally, and this is my favorite way to capture attention, is to offer a small, quick win, right? Yes, we might want to change the lives of our audience and customers and students, but in order to change somebody's life, start by changing their day first. What is something small that could be some sort of reward that activates that reptilian part of our brain to go, "Ooh, I want to come back to this and keep going," right? So oftentimes we can do this through a quick lead magnet, or it might be the article that you write, or a video that solves a little friction that they might have that they finally are now able to get over thanks to you. And of course, now they're subscribed, now they're activated, now they're going to come back and be a part of the community and find other people like them if you can host events online, offline, to facilitate these interactions. And then eventually what happens over time is a person might become a super fan where they end up talking about you without you even asking. They might bring you up in conversation. They will go to at bat for you. If there's a troll or somebody, a hater in your audience, they're going to be there on the front lines to defend you before you even, hear about it. This is the beauty of it. And this is what ultimately turns into a super fan.
I love that. We're here with Pat Flynn. He's the author of a number of books, including Superfans. If you want to learn more about Pat, there's a lot of places. You can go to patflynn.com. You can go to smartpassiveincome.com. That is his popular podcast. You can also go to spipro.com. We're going to talk about that shortly. But it looks like there's some Pat Flynn Superfans in the house.
Awesome.
we have a LinkedIn user saying Pat is the best. And we also want to make sure that we say hi to some of the great folks who are tuning in. Margaret's here. Dawn is here from Colorado, Julie from Las Vegas, Cheryl from Minneapolis. We've got a LinkedIn user from Texas. Roy is here. Rebecca from Chicagoland. Elen from Queens. We've got Maureen from the Jersey Shore. Rita Marie from Ireland. Lori is here from Miami. Anand from India. Glacia from Brazil. Salam from Indonesia, and many more. We're so glad to have all of you tuning in here. So Pat, something that I am curious about, you have a great quote, and I wanted to just read it back and maybe have you expound on it a little bit more if you don't mind.
Okay.
You have said, and I think this is interesting because the instinct for many people as they think about, how do I grow my audience? How do I grow my fan base? They might think, well, gosh, I need to spend money to do that. But you have said, instead of spending money on ads, spend more time on people. What do you mean by that, and how does that actually play out in practice?
Yeah, I mean, I often say that your earnings are a byproduct of how well you serve your audience. And again, going back to understanding not just who they are, but the language that they use, and then actually trying to have conversations with your audience. I think, when I coach a lot of new business owners, I'll often suggest that they have conversations with their target audience. And it's interesting because there's always a lot of pushback, like, oh, no, I already know who they are. Or I think I know who they are. But the truth is, when you have these conversations, and I do this 10, 12 times a month, I actually reach out to brand new email subscribers. I try to get them on a Zoom call. And many times it's just not able to work out. But even the one or two conversations I have are so golden, because not only am I, A, getting to know exactly how they found me, which is just useful in general, B, getting to know what they might need help with and the challenges and struggles that they're going through, C, the language that they're using, the lyrics like we just talked about, but D, I'm also now able to put a real person to the avatar that I have, right? And there is an exercise that many entrepreneurs use, which is like the ideal customer or the ideal avatar. And, you make up a name for them and their story, but it's one thing to make up that person. It's another thing to actually know who they are and what it is that they're going through, so that when you podcast, when you're writing a blog post, when you are on video, you can imagine that person listening or watching or reading on the other end. And your content, your positioning, your message just becomes that much more real because it is real. And so when you dedicate time to the understanding of who it is that you're serving, the earnings, the products, the content just becomes so much easier to come up with and create. And the selling part of it doesn't even feel like selling at all, because it just becomes a natural conclusion to the research and understanding that you've done with your audience. And the truth is, when you create those magical moments for people, that's what elevates a person into your brand even more. When you create opportunities for them to find each other, again, people finding people, right? This is my buddy Chris Ducker, who I know Dorie, often says, it's not about the B2B or even the B to C. It's about the P to P, the person to person, the human relationships. And this is why those little random fun facts about me work really well to connect with people. That's how I'm able to stand out amongst all the noise that's out there. That's exactly why people share and remember to share the fact, like, it's interesting. Lego tomorrow, in fact, is launching a DeLorean. That's the car from Back to the Future Lego set. And they announced this a couple weeks ago. I must have had at least 400 or 500 DMs come my way. Go, Pat, did you see this? Pat, did you see this? Did you see this? And it's like, okay, Pat, well, Back to the Future, knowing that about you has nothing to do with your business. But here's what it has to do with: everything to do with building a relationship. And as a result of that, it actually does matter for my business. And you become more trustworthy, you become more authoritative, and you just become more connected. And like we talked about earlier, you're able to stand out amongst all the noise that's out there. So invest in people, and not just people like in your audience and understanding them. It also is important to invest in people who can further that message for you and amplify that through the team that you build and the people that you hire and whatnot. I mean, I can tell, I know for sure that I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it weren't for the team members that have sort of surrounded me and help support the cause and help support the message to serve the audience that's out there. So yeah, people over profits, and the profits will come.
Fantastic advice. We're here with Pat Flynn, the author of Superfans. And if you are enjoying this conversation, hit the like button and the share button so that your friends and colleagues can benefit from this conversation as well. We also wanted to say hi to some of the great folks tuning in from around the world. Anastasia's here from Greece. We have Maison from Toronto. We have Sushma here. David is here from Italy. We have Cherry in here. We have Anna from New Hampshire. Holly's joining us. Maureen, Alex from Loveland, Colorado. Raul from Delaware. We have a LinkedIn user from India. We have Siamantak from India, Servan from Istanbul, Lori from Arkansas, Lynn from Washington State, Kelvin from San Francisco, and many more. We are delighted all of you are here. Now, Pat, let's take a brass tacks look at community building. I know that over the past couple of years, a big focus of yours has been creating a community called spipro.com. Maybe you can just walk us through what is this and how do you actually build a community in today's busy kind of, noise-filled society? How do you make this worthwhile? How do you make it stick for people?
For sure. And before that, I want to point out, first of all, you're really good at reading names and exactly how to read them. And that's a part of this, right? Understanding and making people feel like they're heard. And like when you said David, right, versus David, and you just knew to say that, it has an impact on that person. Like, wow, you took the time, or you just understood me. And a part of building community is to allow people to feel like they are heard. And it's to allow people to feel like they belong to something. If there's something in common that you can bring people together with, not only are they now able to talk to you and you're able to talk to them and you're able to make a connection there, but people are able to make a connection with each other. And just like neurons connecting and wires connecting in the brain, it again enhances the brand that you have. And so SPI Pro, there's a really interesting story here. This was actually a idea that my team and I had in 2018, but it was going to take some time. And, it wasn't really even a priority to build a community because we were focused on creating online courses. We have some very successful online courses about podcasting, email marketing, affiliate marketing, webinars, etc., and have made millions doing that. So we were focusing on that. But then we created a live event in San Diego. We had 500 entrepreneurs come to town. And you know what was really interesting? Based on my own attendance at events that I've been to, I knew that we wanted to create really long breaks in between the presentations. So there was a presentation, there was like 1.5 to 2 hours of break before the next talk. It was just one stage. And I wanted to focus on that because I knew, based on my own experience, that the best times at events were actually not what I was watching or listening to on stage. It was those moments in between, in the hallways, those connections that were happening. And based on the feedback from the attendees, that was exactly the biggest value that people got out of that. And then, of course, we had the event scheduled for the next year, which is 2020. And then 2020 happened, and we all know what went down. And the event got delayed. And then 2021, it was going to happen again. And then it just got canceled. And you know what? I said, you know what? We need to create these hallway moments like we have one time a year at this event, or actually just once in general. And because it only happened once, We want to create that feeling all the time. How do we do that? Well, let's create an online community to bring these conversations. It's not about creating more content even. And we ran a survey to our audience and said, how much would you actually care if there was additional content in here versus, meeting other people, networking and such? Only 5% of people out of the hundreds, if not thousands that we asked, cared if there was more content in there or not. They wanted connection. And of course, everybody, especially during the pandemic, was craving this. So we actually pushed this idea of building an online community ahead. We worked with a great team over at circle.so to create a private community that we had more control over. It's like a beautiful marriage between Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups and Slack. So it has a little bit more control. And we charged a premium for it. And we have hundreds of entrepreneurs now who have filled out an application so that we know it's the right fit, not just us to bring them in, but them to bring us into their lives. And it's just been, we have not gotten this kind of feedback ever. And again, the interesting thing is we are just facilitating and creating a safe space for these conversations to happen. And the cool thing is it's like now people are able to just immediately connect with people in there, right? It's like when you go to a baseball game and you see another person, wearing the same color hat as you, you'll already have stuff that you could talk about. You already are supporting the same team and you kind of win together, you lose together. And that's the beauty of this. And we have masterminds that are set up. We have events and challenges. We are focusing so much on this, in fact, that this is the center of our business now. And it's also providing a recurring income, which is really fantastic. It's more predictable. It's more fulfilling, in fact, because of the feedback that we've been getting. In addition to that, eventually we're going to open it up so that a lot of the members in there can meet in person. It's not, we're almost there. So just again, this feeling of being able to facilitate and bring these people together so they can find each other is amazing. We're hiring team members for this. We have a amazing community director. Her name is Jillian that we hired recently, who's just incredible. And it's just, again, to be able to bring people together in a place where they can find each other is just amazing. And so it's been the center of our business now, and SPI Pro is where to go if you want to apply and check it out. We do let people in quarterly so that people come in sort of like a class and people are tagged as being class of X, Y, Z in there, and they can find each other, and like the alumni sort of help the new people come in. And it's just become this amazing container of epic ideas and epic support.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much for telling us and sort of breaking down the process around which you created SPI Pro. We're here with Pat Flynn. He's the author of Superfans, among other books. That's his newest one. We're talking about how to capture the lasting attention of your audience. And if you are enjoying this conversation and you want to make sure that you never miss one, we're here every Thursday at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific. You can go to dorieclark.com/LinkedIn, follow me there, subscribe to the newsletter, and you will get reminders about these conversations that happen every week. And we want to say hi to some of the great folks also joining us. Annette is here from Southern California. We've got Ricardo joining us from Mexico. Michelle's here from California. Pooja from Oklahoma. Jerry just joined. We have Rose from Milburn, New Jersey. And we have Asma from Algeria. So many great folks who are joining us. And April wants to chime in. She says that she is a Pat Flynn super fan for life. So you have definitely managed to cultivate a great audience of advocates.
Thank you,
Pat.
April.
Yeah, that is fantastic. So, Pat, a question that I have, there are a lot of people that I know, and many folks tuning in here are part of my Recognized Expert community as well. And there's a lot of interest in that in starting podcasts. Now, you are a longtime podcaster. You've been at it from the beginning, and certainly, in addition to creating a high quality show like Smart Passive Income, a big advantage in podcasting is duration and persistence.
Mm-hmm.
But for anyone who is starting a podcast now, who might feel like, oh my gosh, everyone has a podcast. There's so many. How will I ever get noticed? How can I, break through all of the noise and actually create something successful? What is the guidance that you would give to somebody who is just starting out and doesn't yet have the advantage of longevity?
Starting a podcast is one of the smartest things any business owner can do because, like you said, the longevity of the listener and how much of your content they are consuming is just unmatched. Right? Think about a video on YouTube. People watching, maybe up to 5 minutes is doing really good, right? If you look at your retention graphs on YouTube, 5 minutes or more, you're doing excellent, which is kind of crazy. 5 minutes on a blog, a person might be reading for 5 to 10 minutes. They're skipping around. And of course, short form content, especially in video format, is becoming more and more popular. But when you look at a podcast, a person, and you might think about your own podcast listening habits, you're listening to 20, 30 minutes, an hour, sometimes more. You might be subscribed to several podcasts. And the reason why it's so powerful is because a podcast is the only type of content right now that can fit into a person's normal everyday life when they're driving, when they're on a plane, when they're wherever and not able to watch video or read. And that's why it's so powerful. And not only that, to the creator, to the podcaster, it's a one-to-many, right? And it's amazing. The ability for me to sit here in my home office and use this thing called a microphone to blast out my message and information and motivation for people is just incredible. But to the listener, it is a one-on-one conversation. It is literally the most scalable way to, or it's the best way to scale intimacy, if you want to call it that, with building a relationship with your audience. I mean, a person is literally listening to you in their private life, in their ear. You can't get any closer than that. And so it's so powerful. So if I were to give some advice for those of you who are starting a podcast, it would be get started. You know, a lot of us tend to delay these things because we want the perfect name of our show. We want the perfect artwork, all this kind of stuff. You can always change that. But every day you go without a podcast is a day that you're not able to make these connections with people that are out there. You definitely want to hone in on who it is that you're serving. What are their problems? What are the stories that you can pull out? What are the case studies that you can share to motivate them, to inspire them, to entertain them, whatever it might be. But the best way to grow your podcast, because we don't have the luxury as podcasters of an algorithm like on TikTok or an algorithm like on YouTube or on other social media platforms, it definitely is going to be a result of the relationships that you build. And so if you are able to invite a guest on who you know might have an audience that matches yours, that's great because chances are they might share it too. You being a guest on another podcast is a great way to grow. Seth Godin said recently that podcasting is the new blogging. If that's the case, I say that guest podcasting is the new guest blogging. And then feature people who might be happy to share as well. You know, I think a lot of us podcasters go, oh, we want the A-lister celebrities on our podcast because that makes us look good. And yeah, that could help with the authority through association and such. But there are likely some amazing groups and forum owners, for example, who would love to get a chance to share their information on your podcast, right? It almost feels like a radio show. It feels very professional in a way more than just like even connecting on, Instagram Live or something like that. And so what's really interesting is when you feature this person, you make them look good. Chances are they will then share it in a group for you rather than you going into a group and spamming and saying, hey, listen to my podcast. It's great. That could work, although you're likely going to get some backlash versus featuring a member or better yet, the admin or forum owner, interviewing them, chances are they are going to share it. And now you are getting promoted through the person that has already spent the time to earn that trust with that audience. And it works so well. That's the number one strategy that my students are using to grow to thousands of subscribers per month. And that's that interview a forum owner or group owner who's likely to share it, who likely doesn't ever get a chance to get the spotlight. And again, this is going back to Donald Miller and StoryBrand. When you can make your audience the hero of the story, then people will want access to that guide. When you make Luke Skywalkers, people want the Yoda to teach them as well. And so focus on using your podcast to highlight these stories. And that's the beauty of this. In fact, when I was in the middle of selling my podcasting course, this was when it launched back in 2017, I interviewed 3 beta students, founding students who came on, who successfully went through my course. And I asked them to come on my podcast, 3 in one episode. But I didn't ask them to go, I didn't say, hey, can you tell everybody listening why Power Up Podcasting is the best course you'd have ever taken? No, I said, well, why did you want to start a podcast? And they told their story. Why did it take so long? What were the challenges? And they told their struggles. And every person listening, guess what? Had very similar struggles. And for example, Dr. B, who was over 60 years old, who wanted to start a podcast, but she was deathly afraid of technology. We pulled her story out. And then, of course, this is juxtapositioned to the after. What is life like now? And Dr. B was in, at the time, 33 different countries, thousands of listens to help people with ADHD. And then, of course, without even asking, in front of everybody on this podcast, engaged listeners, she goes, Pat, I couldn't have done this without your course. Everybody should go get your course. I didn't have to prompt that. It's the most beautiful testimonial naturally coming out that you could organically ever ask for. And so this sold more courses for us. We actually made over $150,000 in that week. A large part of that was a result of that podcast and then the stories that were pulled out. So that's just a taste of the kind of stuff that a podcast can do for you and some of the tips that I have that can help you out.
That's excellent. We're here with Pat Flynn. He's the author of the book Superfans. You can learn more about him in his podcast at smartpassiveincome.com. And you can learn more about his online community that he runs at spipro.com. And we also wanted to say hi to some of the awesome folks tuning in. Vijaya is here from Bengaluru now. Cynthia's tuning in. We have Benam. We have Krishan from Germany. We have Ruffin from North Carolina. Brian's tuning in from Phoenix. We're so glad to have all of you. And a question came in, Pat, from Annette. And she's curious, when it comes to the new offerings that you've had, I mean, you've done online courses, you've launched SPI Pro. How do you come up with the ideas for the thing that you're going to do? I know this is something that in your second book, Will It Fly, you actually talk about quite a bit. But where do these ideas come from, and how do you know that it's the right one for you to be pursuing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Ideas come from many places, from collaboration with others, through research. I do an exercise. I teach this in my book, Will It Fly, called a market map exercise. We could all do this. This, in fact, is a very valuable thing to do. You create a spreadsheet, 3 columns. The first column, you list all the places that your target audience exists. If you get an idea, you do this, right? And then if the second column is a list of all the people in that space who has already earned the trust, like the talent, the podcast hosts, the owners of websites and products and such. That's the second P. The first P, again, is places. Where do they exist? Second P is the people. The third P is the products that are already being sold to that audience. And just that exercise alone, you're able to see what that environment is like. And like when you fly somewhere new, you want to know, like, what's the map? Where's a good space for me to land, so you can find your position there, so that you don't set up shop in somebody else's land, but also can maybe set up something that is complementary or fills a hole that already exists in that space. So anytime I get an idea that I'm like, ooh, this sounds interesting, I don't just immediately like buy the domain name, which I know is usually the first step that a lot of us do, or get the social media handles. I go into that space and I go, what's it like here? I'm gonna, not just like be a tourist in this area and go, okay, I'm gonna set up shop right here. I'm going to maybe spend a couple days there, right? I'm gonna go and get an Airbnb there instead of being a content tourist in that area, that new niche, so that I can see what it's like to live there. And I might find I don't like it. I might find that, well, I don't see how I can provide value here, in which case, good, because then I can move on to the next idea. It's about these micro experiments that's really important. But in terms of like the origin of these ideas, especially now that I had an audience, I want to remove the guesswork as much as possible. And this is something that you can do even if you don't have an audience. But if you do have an audience, even if it's a small audience of 10 people, imagine 10 listeners who listen to every single podcast episode that you have, or they seem to comment on every single post that you put that you offer. Well, those are really important people. Talk to them. Again, communicate, understand what they're going through, what are their challenges, and then make some hypothesis about what you might be able to do to serve them. And then help that person if you can. What I love to do is to try to make it easy for people, right? So here's the formula. Pick one target audience. And you again, this is not a permanent decision. This is you exploring. Pick one target audience. Then find one person who has a single problem in that particular space, and then help that one person get a result. One person, that's it. I didn't say build a website. I didn't say any of this stuff yet that we often go to when we kind of create a new idea. Get one person, one result. And that's going to do a few things. Number one, it's going to help you understand what it's like to go out and find a person and how to talk to them, to be able to convince somebody that you can help them, whether it's for a small fee or even for free. Secondly, you're going to see what it's like and what the challenges that they're struggling with and what it might take to have them overcome that. Thirdly, you're going to find whether or not you are fulfilled from actually helping that person and what it's like to do that. And maybe this is a sign that, okay, I tried it once. I got one person, one result. I don't want to do it. But usually what happens is when you get one person, one result, it unlocks something up here. That confidence that's so important when it comes to the services and the offerings that you have. It just unlocks, because I mean, this happened to me with my podcasting course. I was very reluctant to create it, even though I have been podcasting since 2010. And people have been asking me for it. I was always feeding people to other people's courses. I didn't think that I was good enough or had anything new. But then when I was able to coach somebody and help one person get one result, it made me believe that not only that I could help people now, which I wasn't sure about before, right? So that crushed that objection. But it made me realize that I had now an obligation to help people, because I could do it in my own special way that people could resonate with. And if I held myself back because of fear, that was going to be the selfish way to go about it. It's like if I had a life ring and somebody was drowning in the world of wanting to start a podcast, and I was like, no, I'm going to hold on to this life ring because I've never done it before. I'm not sure if I'm going to throw it straight at you. I don't know. This is like, it's cold outside. Can you imagine if that was like for real? You were like, somebody's like, your audience needs the life ring that you have to offer. Are you really going to let fear? Are you really going to let the fact that you might not perfectly throw it out there to them? If you don't, then bring it back in and try again, because those people are out there and they need your help. Sorry, I'm on a little rant right now, but I get very passionate about this when people get in their own way.
We love it. This is valuable advice. Thank you so much. We have been here with Pat Flynn. Pat is the author of the newest book, Superfans. His previous books were Will It Fly and Let Go. If you want to learn more about Pat, check out his podcast at smartpassiveincome.com. And he also is the force behind the online community SPI, that's Smart Passive Income, SPIPro.com. And you can learn about him and his work there. Pat
Thank you.
Flynn, it is so great to have you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It's been absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone for tuning in. We will see you next week. Take care.